serious? What's a scary science fact that the public knows nothing about? I only recently learned that when you get sunburned, the burn isn't because of skin cell damage. The UV radiation damages the DNA. Then the skin cells decide to commit suicide and fall off so that the damaged DNA doesn't produce cancer. I'll never be mad at my skin peeling again. If you're exposed to rabies and start to show symptoms, your chance of survival is virtually 0%. When doing an autopsy, they don't put the organs back where they belong. They are all stored in the belly. Brain aneurysms can be completely unpredictable and can happen at any time in your life, no matter how healthy you are. A kid who I went to high school with at the age of 16 just did not wake up one morning and his cause of death was a brain aneurysm. If your dog swims in a lake after receiving a spot-on flea treatment, it absolutely decimates the invertebrate population. A large dog swimming in 8 Olympic swimming pools worth of water soon after treatment will leach enough neurotoxin to kill 50% of the lake's invertebrate population within 48 hours. I say after, I mean relatively soon after. Within say a day. To have an effect quite this devastating, the leaching does reduce over the month. But it's still there, and the effect of multiple dogs still allows for a terrible buildup of chemicals. That you should never use bleach to clean cat pee. The combination creates chlorine gas that is very toxic. Grapefruits completely duck with a shitload of prescription medications. Edit. Grapefruits, not grapefruits. During World War II, the Japanese would continuously experiment on the people they captured. Like open a pregnant woman's stomach and see the baby, infect her with syphilis and see the effects etc. While the Nazis also did commit genocide and all that, Japan was never confronted about those war crimes. Heart muscle cells don't reproduce much in adults, roughly 1% per year. If you have an infarction or other stressor that kills those cells, then your heart won't be able to grow new cells to replace the dead ones. This is why patients with diseases like heart failure end up needing a heart transplant. Trying to get this process to happen is a major goal for many cardiac researchers. Edit. Thank you all for making this such an engaging and interesting discussion. I've been studying heart cells for 10+ years now. Basic scientist. No clinical training. And it's so refreshing to read many diverse perspectives and on-point questions. The universe's Higgs field might be metastable, a false vacuum, and decay at any moment, destroying everything. Before the vaccine, the number of people who have had HPV infection and have had at least one sexual partner was 85% in females and 91% of males, by far the most common STI. There are alternative ways some proteins can form tertiary structures. These different structures make the protein unable to function. These alternate protein structures are infectious and incurable as they are so stable. If you get some in your blood, they will slowly convert your own proteins when making contact. They're called prions. Anthrax spores can remain viable for decades in the soil or animal products such as dried or processed hides and wool. Microplastics in the food and water supplies are crossing the blood-brain barrier. SHHH. Another Carrington event. The original Carrington event was in 1859, which was basically an intense geomagnetic storm that disrupted, knocked out telegrams because that's all the technology there was to disrupt back then. Nowadays we use electricity for virtually everything. If it hit now, the effect would be like an amp. But globally, there'd be no functional technology that involved electrics. In essence, losing all electrics would in turn stop communications, then logistics, and then fundamental infrastructure like food distribution, healthcare and utilities, other than electricity. The plague is still out there. The bubonic plague is endemic in many parts of the world, but cases are very rare because we've got it pretty well handled. If there's a general breakdown in society like a nuclear war, super volcano eruption or asteroid impact, it's out there waiting to come back. Scientists don't know exactly how acetaminophen works to relieve pain and reduce fever. They have an idea but nothing for sure, but yet it's the most commonly used pain reliever in the world. DuPont knowingly infected over 90% of the American population with PFOAs, a harmful plastic that has a half-life of 20 years. Lawsuit is still ongoing but no one seems to be bothered. Edit. This link will talk about the different trials and settlements that DuPont and companies alike have faced. Also talks about what a PFOA and its dangerous effects. Microplastics revealed in the placentas of unborn babies. Update. By popular demand, the WHO research paper on requirements for safe drinking water and formaldehyde in drinking water. A lot of people in rural towns with an elevated cemetery around. This happens in Ireland a lot, so there is formaldehyde leaking into the drinking water. But it won't kill you. But the thought of drinking dead people juice is probably equally bad. Sorry not sorry. Update. I have a PDF link to the scientific research paper from WHO concerning the requirements for safe drinking water. And it covers the entire formaldehyde in drinking water issue. If anyone is interested, I read it and I can confirm it's true, but not detrimental to your health, even long-term AR. Limnic eruptions. There are pockets of CO2 trapped under lakes all around the world that can be released at any time, creating an invisible tidal wave that kills everything in its path. Since it's heavier than air, you will just suddenly start choking and die. Inside the permafrost around the world there is stored about twice the amount of CO2 we currently have in our atmosphere. That's why permafrost must stop melting. Edit. Thanks for all the nice serious comments. Edit 2. Thanks for the awards. I appreciate it. The vacuum decay death of the universe. The basic Li-5 premise is that it is possible that at some point in the universe itself started collapsing into a more stable version of itself. And once this started, the collapse spreads outwards into all directions at the speed of light. Because it travels at the speed of light, there is no way to know it's coming. You could literally stop existing the next second. How easy it is to inadvertently seriously damage yourself with an unfortunate combination of ordinary supermarket products. Also, prions, duck prions. Antimicrobial resistance. The bacteria are getting resistant to the drugs much faster than the rate at which we are producing new drugs. Soon we will reach a scenario when antibiotics cannot treat simple yet lethal infections. The German Nazi army consumed massive amounts of Pervitin, a brand name for literal meth, and the company producing Pervitin made the pills till the 1980s, and the armies used Pervitin for drills till then. The Nazis also put Pervitin in chocolates, calling it horsefrohen chocolate to ease the dreaded life of a stay-at-home mother, and so on. Eastern Germany still has a huge meth problem, which is a whole lot less surprising, knowing that it has been produced there legally up until fairly recently. An asteroid passed the Earth in September that was about 40-90 m in diameter, and we didn't see it until a day later because it traveled towards us from the direction of the sun. It passed us at half the distance from the Earth to the moon. Nutrition deficiencies such as iron, vitamin C have many symptoms that were uncovered in an experiment in residential school. They would have a class of indigenous children that would never get iron from foods or any intake. Another class would get the iron supplements, then compare for results. At any given time the Earth can be hit with a gamma ray burst. We won't see it coming since it moves at the speed of light, and all life apart from deep underground or deep in the ocean will be wiped out in minutes. Although unlikely, it can happen at any time. Trauma can cause structural changes to your brain. PTSD is literally an injury. If my college biology professor wasn't completely misinformed, most humans have some form of parasite living inside them. Some variety of worm, etc. There are just creepy crawlies in our insides and we might never notice them. The one that came closest to giving me nightmares was hookworms. Although the thought that you could have heartworms kind of messed with me, too. Evidently, they're not just for dogs. I learned about ton 618 the other day. My facts here may be mildly incorrect. Feel free to Google. It's a black hole about 10.3 billion light years away, but we can still detect the massive amount of light bending around it. It's so large, they had to make a new category of black hole for it called ultramassive black holes. It's believed to be the largest thing in the universe. Its diameter is 14 times the diameter of Neptune's orbit, so it could fit our entire solar system in it 14 times across. Side to side, If the black hole replaced our sun, we would be deleted. If it replaced the black hole that is currently at the center of the Milky Way, within 120 years the Milky Way would be deleted. This black hole doesn't swallow planets. It swallows entire galaxies. The idea of this thing freaks me the duck out. Edit. Whoa, I went for a nap and this blew TF up. Most upvoted comment of all time. Lego. So yeah, I was mistaken a few times here. Like if the black hole replaced ours, it would take 120 years to destroy us. Not the entire galaxy. The black hole is larger than I originally said. And true black holes don't technically give off light, but they are pretty much surrounded by light. I typed this out from memory and sadly my memory is pure garbage. But still I'm glad this encouraged you folks to look more into it and stuff. Space is cool and terrifying. Ha. 1 in 3 people will get cancer. It's pretty ducked. There was a person who made a post one time that got hugely popular. This person was a chemical worker of some kind and went into detail about some of the nearly totally unknown, but insanely terrifying chemicals that exist. They ranged from terrifying to damn near apocalyptic. It was a super interesting read. I wouldn't know how to find it now, but maybe someone else would be able to. That post would really fit here. Edit. I checked on the links provided directly to me and I don't think it's any of them. But I have found some great reading. I don't think it was a direct post, but a reply to a post. It blew up and got hugely popular though. The guy listed a bunch of stuff in order of seriousness and what to do expect in case of spill or containment leak. I recall his most serious one being more or less, by the time you realize it's happened, you and everyone in the building around you are screwed. There is a naturally occurring thought in many humans named the call of the void where, without reason, humans see a way they could die and they wonder whether they should kill themselves, even if they have no real intention of doing so. Edit. Yes. The true term is el appel du vide, the French term for call of the void. Also, thanks for the awards. I believe this is my first gold. So many people will struggle with infertility. It's not talked about or really discussed in middle school or high school in health class. When it happens, it's such a shock to the families and they are completely unprepared. The numbers are going up as well. Statistical 1/4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which is pretty high, but again, miscarriage isn't discussed. There's many unknown and forgotten diseases trapped in the permafrost and it's slowly but surely melting away. There's been a few cases in Russia, while exploring for oil gas I believe, of people dying of strange diseases that we have no idea how to treat, because they've basically been hidden there since before medicine even existed. Some could be contagious. We just know very little about it. When the baby boomer generation fills the nursing homes, there very likely won't be enough nursing staff to care for them as more and more nurses are leaving the profession. The United States has lost and never recovered at least 6 nuclear devices. Approximately 60%, in some reports, of the world's population have the parasite Toxoplasma gondii in their brain. For a long time it's thought to have been a benign presence, but recent statistical research shows that it may have an impact on things like levels of anger and rates of accidents and suicide. When gondii is on rats, it changes their behavior so that they find the smell of cat urine sexually appealing. So they find cats and get eaten. In the gut of the cat the parasite can reproduce. Would scour the ocean mostly clean of life, like, the major fisheries are down something like 80% from their peaks, and nobody is doing anything about it. Many antibiotics make hormonal birth control stop working. Not just a fact but a warning. We might be sitting on a ticking time bomb of mad cow disease, prion disease that was in tainted beef in the 90s. The most closely related prion disease, kuru, has an average incubation period of several decades, like 30 years or so. So there's a theory that the people who died from mad cow disease in the 90s are actually only a very small fraction of the people who contracted it, technically called VCJD if it's in humans, as they were just the people who the disease happened to progress very fast in. There may be hundreds of thousands if not millions of people who are going to start losing their sanity and dying as their brains rot from the inside in the next several years. There's also a pretty good chance this isn't true though and nothing will happen. A lot of scientists believe the incubation period is 10 years or less. as we haven't really seen growing numbers of VCJD deaths yet. Since we have no way of finding out, the test for VCJD is just looking at someone's brain to see if it's all messed up. All we can really do is just wait and see if something happens and try to prevent further spread. The longer nothing happens, the more probable it is that there's no issue. But that's why blood donors from Europe, the UK were banned outright. If a bunch of people do have it and donated blood, things will be bad to say the least. Although they'll already be bad when the UK life expectancy drops a decade. The youngest persons who developed Alzheimer's were around 25 years old. One lady got diagnosed with it at 31 while pregnant. BTW, when you get the disease at like 65, it didn't suddenly begin. It has been creeping up and ravaging your brain for at least 20 years if not more. You just didn't realize it because our brain is very good at compensating damages until it cannot. Basically, the day you lose yourself in the supermarket, it's too late. Your brain is mostly mush and there is so far nothing you can do. That means that if you are 40-60 years old and reading this, chances are that some of you already started to experience the onset of Alzheimer's brain degeneration. It's just not advanced enough for you to realize it. Have a nice day. The human body temperature in developed countries is actually declining. And at the same time global warming is increasing the temperature thresholds for many fungus types. This is leading to a whole new medical issue of fungus infecting humans, and its main source of protection, body temperature, is no longer working. That body temperature is a large reason for the success of mammals all over the world. After the KT extinction, the sun was blocked and cold-blooded species couldn't raise their body temperature to kill off infections in their bodies. There is ample evidence that after KT that fungus spread all over the world in massive quantities, which leads many to believe this led to the ascendancy of mammals on Earth. Radio Lab story about this for those of you interested in learning more and sources. Magnolia plants are so old that they predate the evolution of pollination by bees. They were pollinated by beetles. Neutrinos are a particle that has an extremely small chance of interacting with matter. Like if a rock was dropped randomly from space to the Earth, the chance it would hit a specific target is similar to the chance it would interact with any matter. They have to build huge chambers deep in the earth and wait months or while to have the possibility to detect one from the countless that constantly zoom through the earth from the sun. If the sun were to go supernova, it would create so many neutrinos that they would kill you, assuming nothing else did. Edit. Apparently, they detect more than I expected. Several hundred a year. Saccadic masking. A mechanism our eyes have that cuts off the processing of retinal images when it becomes blurred. Humans become effectively blind during a saccade. Prions are terrifying. They're basically zombies at a protein level. They're misshapen in such a way that causes them to misshape other proteins. Normal methods of disinfection don't work. This makes researching them a very tricky matter, as while most cases involve eating infected meat, mishandling prion samples is all it takes. Tricky part is, there is no treatment either. Once they get in you, they are 100% fatal. It has been a while since I've studied them, so this picture may be incomplete, but I do know they are always fatal. 50% of insects have disappeared since 1970. Insect population is down 27% in the last 30 years, declining between 1 and 4% each year depending on the genus. All onions, all veggies in the allium family, are toxic to dogs. Worst case scenario then can develop AHA, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, whereas the body destroys its own red blood cells. This disease is about 80% fatal. My dog caught it. We are not sure from where, but it was a primary disease, not a result of a cancer. We think he was eating leeks out of the garden. Took a week in the hospital, 2 blood transfusions, and about 6 months of meds to get him back. He started at 45 pounds and was down to 19 pounds at the worst part of it. If there was a threat traveling to Earth at the speed of light, we would die instantly out of nowhere because we have no way of seeing it coming. Reverting global warming does not unmelt the South Pole. Antarctica is a giant ice mountain, size of us plus Canada, average 1 kilometer thick, on top of land that is studded by plates of ice in the sea. Think of a very slow moving pudding held in place by a little edge. All the modeling suggests that once you lose those plates, Eventually all the ice will slide into the water. To refreeze the plates once they are gone, you need an ice age of about -2C to pre-industrial, or -3C to current. There is a 70 meter of sea level rise of ice on the South Pole. The models swing widely on how long it takes to melt on a bunch of factors, but it could be less than 2 centuries for the first 10 meters. So either we geoengineer to cool at least the South Pole by a tremendous amount, or to hold the ice in place, or in time all coastal regions are lost. The plates are still in place, but the warmest one is showing signs of stress and thinning. It is linked to 7 meters of sea level rise if it fails. To me this is more threatening than any other climate change catastrophe. You can die from a brain aneurysm with zero warning. You can be perfectly healthy, get a headache, and be dead before you reach the emergency room. Also broken arrow nuclear incidents, especially the 6 nuclear weapons the US military just lost and never found. Bonus: only scary BC people don't know it. If someone is having a severe allergic reaction, an EpiPen alone will not save them. It's only supposed to open their airways long enough to get them to a hospital. Similarly, don't restrain someone having a seizure or try to shove something in their mouth. Call an ambulance. Ionized radiation can change the programming on any motherboard. For example, planes, cars, causing them to crash. Antibiotics prescribed as if they were sugar candies when their usage is not justified. And also how important it is to fully complete the treatment. Edit: my issue is that people take antibiotics for this magic pill that cures everything related to any form of infection. I don't hate on docs prescribing ATBs to stop super infections, chronic patients, or anything reasonable. It's just in my work I see this magic pill situation way too many times. How about this? Most of modern knowledge of pneumonia actually originates from experiments performed by the Nazis. Overuse of antibiotics can lead to the creation of superbugs, infectious organisms capable of resisting common antibiotics. It's happening right now. There isn't an infinite supply of resources on Earth. Politics plays a huge part in scientific research. Late to the party, but here goes. There are weaponized strains of anthrax which can remain viable and dangerous for 40+ years after release. In 1942, the UK tested an anthrax bomb on Grenada Island, killing a flock of sheep in days. Some died in hours. Examination showed that the spores could remain active for decades and decontamination proved impossible at the time. The project was scrapped. Fast forward to 1981. An eco-terrorist group smuggled a sample off of the island and threatened the UK government with releasing it if the island wasn't decontaminated. The spores were still active and deadly. It took 4 years to plan and execute the cleanup, using 280 tons of formaldehyde in a seawater solution, and removing 7 hectares worth of soil to a depth of 3 feet, about 58,000 tons of topsoil, where the concentration was too high for the juice to do the job. The island was confirmed clean in 1990, 4 years after cleanup began. We still have no idea what consciousness is. Worse, we have not many ideas how to think about it. Just some philosophical ideas, Dennett, Chalmers etc. I mean, we don't know how to build interstellar ship, but we could write books and make movies about it. We could speculate about different approaches and ideas. For consciousness, it's not true. We don't know why it exists. What is I? What is the role of consciousness? How it emerges? How to research it, and so on. Coal plants release 500 times more radiation directly into the atmosphere than any nuclear fission plant ever could. Confined spaces. Be very careful of confined spaces. It's not just the tightness of the space, but also the type of space. Especially on old ships with a lot of rust. Opening up closed hatches and going into confined spaces can get you killed due to the lack of oxygen in those confined spaces. Others can also die from trying to rescue. Take things slow, evaluate your surroundings, and don't be afraid to ask for help if you are unsure. Antibiotics cause you to retain 10x as much of the heavy metals from your diet. As in, ordinarily, if you feed a mouse some mercury, it poops out 90% of it by the end of the month. You give that mouse antibiotics first, all the mercury stays in the mouse, gets absorbed from the GI tract and deposited in tissue, gut bacteria, yawl. How easy it is to create large amounts of high explosives. Everyone determined enough and desperate enough can create easy workable explosives. Male porn stars are not allowed to eat grapefruit as it makes their ejaculate taste bitter. Governments around the world have, and are developing, weapons technologies that can easily wipe out all life on Earth. Researchers have found viruses in the Arctic permafrost that have been frozen for thousands of years. One of these viruses, Pythovirus, was dormant for 30,000 years until the researchers revived it and it infected the amoebas that were placed in the tank with it. Which of course presents a scary scenario. What happens when the ice melts away and viruses are released that haven't been in contact with humans for 10,000 plus years? Vacuum decay. It's theoretically possible that little bubbles of matter instability can be created that then expand out at the speed of light, essentially deleting everything it touches from existence. There would be no warning and we could just suddenly cease to exist. The good news is that it would be totally painless and you'd be gone before you even realize what's happening. Blue whale fart bubbles are big enough to hold a racehorse. A study by MIT in 1972 predicted that society will collapse one way or another during the 2040s. An economist in 2012 reviewed it and he said we are right on track with their trajectory. They had many scenarios, but the one that is playing out is that pollution is making more and more land infertile, which makes it harder to grow food. If the prediction pans out, eventually we won't have enough food to feed everybody, which will start a series of events that will lead to the collapse of society.